like to call the meeting to
What?
what we have on the agenda. We have a continuation of the public hearing on Nature's Wilderness. And, we do have, I wonder if I could ask you, would you mind terribly much if we went and did some very, very short regular planning board business? Would it?
No, I prefer you do that, and I asked you taken off the agenda the other night as well, for the meeting tonight.
So you will be off the agenda, but we had a public hearing, we had a continuation.
Yes.
We continue with the public hearing, but you will not be on the planning board agenda.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So, I don't
No,
know,
I
if that
prefer
part
to
of
do
the
that.
speech
Yes,
and the
yes, no,
introduction,
I'm happy.
I'm just asking for indulgence that we just do a couple of things where a quorum on the planning board is 3, and we have 4 members here. I am Joe Pierce, I am the vice chair, and our chair is not here tonight, that's why I'm doing all the talking. So first of all, we have Pat Jackson from Sun Rays, and he gave us a stack of conditional use permit applications. It's only one application, but enough for all of us to read. We have a receipt from the town of Baldwin, and so he's paid up, and that's official, and we should put him on the agenda for the next meeting, if we can. Did you give us an email address to get a hold of that? Or a business card?
I would think it's on there, but let me hand that to you.
Yeah, that's all he's doing. Yep, all he's doing is turning in a CUP application for our consideration. And what we have to do is acknowledge receipt, and, no, I think I can just acknowledge. I got it, see, I got it, like that. And that's that. I think I have to officially designate one copy, the official copy, and go back here and date it as received. Let's see if I can find the page. Date application received 1/9/2020.
So we'll have to talk about this at a subsequent meeting and decide whether to schedule a site walk and a public hearing for this, right?
Yes. This is, all we're doing is accepting this.
Can we put it on the agenda for the 23rd, just so Pat can know that, or does he do that? How does that work?
Well, that generally is the chair's job.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Chair's not present.
And
If I were Pat, I don't want to know.
well, I think we should. What do you think?
I think that you should acknowledge this as received, but not accept it. Because to accept a CUP, we have to vote on it, which means that everybody has to read it.
We just received it.
Right.
Yep,
Just received.
that's it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and do you happen to know the next hearing is on the
23rd. We meet on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month.
Okay,
I checked.
perfect. Okay, great. So today on my phone should show up on the 23rd?
Yes, unless you hear otherwise.
Okay.
Yes, I would say so. And the reason why I'm being so hesitant is that we have a large application in front of us, and we don't know where that's going.
Okay.
And I'm going to be recusing myself from the board during that application, so I have a hard time speaking about what my expectations are.
Okay.
You know, it's a little complicated there. So somebody would get a hold of you fairly shortly. Okay. So thank you.
Great, well, thanks for accepting the application, really appreciate it.
Yeah. And then we got a piece of correspondence here from the Saco River Corridor Commission. Leo Buckley has applied, to the Saco River Corridor Commission to build a single-family residence on Route 5, just before you cross, not just before, but a little bit before you cross the Saco River, between the railroad tracks and the river on the left. And they will have a public hearing on January
This
22nd.
is where the pickle farm stand is.
Next door to that, yeah.
Did they give, I know we've talked map and lot number before, is it on there?
Here, why don't you take it as a secretary, you are now responsible for that. Awesome.
It also is.
January 20, it just says it will be on January 22nd. Interested parties should contact commission staff for meeting time and location. Do they have to public notice it like we do? Would it probably be in the Shoppers Guide? I have no idea.
The letter was sitting here, and I thought,
There it is.
you know, I won't just swallow the information, I'll pass it on. So that was the proper way to handle that. So now, thank you for your indulgence, Gary. We'll go back to the public hearing, and is there any other applicant in the room who would like to talk to us about any other subject? That's the answer to your question. That was a little, let's go get this done. The question was, there was a talk of another applicant coming in with a subdivision application, and so that's why I asked, anybody here with a subdivision application? No. Okay, then we aren't considering it tonight. So I am going to recuse myself from the board for public hearing and nominating Sue Olafson to run the meeting.
Do we have to second that? If not, I do. Yeah, just in case. Okay.
All right, as you all know, we started this public hearing in December. It was a very robust hearing, I felt. We had some presentations by representatives from Nature's Wilderness that were very informative, and I think we had over 2 hours of public comment, which I found very engaging. Everybody was polite and respectful of other people's points of view, and that was really great. And there were so many people still here by 10:15 that we decided, the board voted to continue this to this date. So we're going to do that tonight, and we'll start where we left off. If people want to raise their hand, I can call on people and have a reasonable amount of time for this one.
Sue, thank you. I was unable to attend the last one because of work commitments, but I wanted to thank the planning board for hosting this. I appreciate the gravity and challenges associated with this project. So I would request or ask to submit a written. I'd like to have on the record, but I also would like to have an opportunity to read through it or go through it with you. And so I'm prepared to give you copies and share copies with the audience as well, if I'm allowed to do that. I've been notified that I am a yes, sir. My name is Mark Chapin. I live on Senator Black Road, and I've been.
How do you spell your last name?
CHAPUT. And I've been notified that I am at least classified as an abutter. And you're going to pass these out if you'd like to have extra copies. And if there aren't enough, I have more.
The only thing I'd like to see for folks is that the applicant.
Oh, okay, here.
But technically, it's not, so I wouldn't expect to play the answers. A lot of it is
Hang on.
Everybody hear that? Let's just introduce, this is Jay Feldman, for those of you who don't know him. He's been hired by the planning board to give us input about what sort of things are required in the application, about the process, and any number of things that we aren't sure about. And so he just indicated that he'd like to be on the record that, while the applicant is here, that the technical team that did the presentation in December is not. And so some of the things that might come forward to the planning board this evening, we may not have answers for. But we will take that in, we will be consulting with Mr. Feldman, and we will certainly get those questions ready.
So thank you. I did have an opportunity to read through the application, which was very helpful to understand the project, but also I was able to look at certain conditions of use, and that's why I'm providing a statement, because I felt like there needed to be some commentary on certain key points. So in this statement, you'll see that it starts with the standards for conditional use permit, section 8 of the land use ordinance. And I'm starting with section 1 of that section, and it starts with if you bear with me reading through a couple of these. The section 1 references the conditional use permit may be granted by the planning board only if the application has established to the satisfaction of the planning board that neither the proposed use nor the proposed site upon which the use will be located is of such a character that the use will have significant adverse impact upon the value of quiet possession of surrounding properties greater than would normally occur from such a use in the district. In reaching a determination on this standard, the planning board shall consider, and I wanted to address a number of those issues. So the first one is subsection 1A, the size of the proposed use compared with the surrounding use. And the response is that a 300-site commercial campground is not consistent with a residential neighborhood of single-family homes. The response of the applicant in the conditional use application only addresses the internal workings of the campground. The application suggests that the campground is completely isolated from the surrounding property. The applicant fails to address the fact that every single vehicle that comes and goes from the campground will travel on Senator Black Road to get to Marston Road. It is simply not the case that the campground will operate in isolation from the surrounding uses. The impact to the homeowners on Senator Black Road and Marston Road will be significant. As written, the application fails to meet this criteria, this condition. Additionally, the Marston House and associated sheds referenced in this section have likely not been grandfathered, and there's been no mention in this section as to how these structures will be used. So what you can see is that I'm addressing each of these standards with my own language as to how we believe that it is not met the standard.
Mark, I just want to clarify, you're Mark Chapwood, but this Teresa Grises Esquire
Is my wife.
is, okay.
I'm not here to represent the
Okay, all right.
I'm
You
just
spoke
wait,
last
I
week
did.
when you were here, yeah. Okay, thank you.
For clarity, yes. Subsection 1B, the intensity of the proposed use, including the amount and type of traffic to be generated, hours of operation, expanse of pavement and similar measures of use compared with surrounding uses. My response, or our response, is the proposed commercial 300 unit campground anticipated amount and type of traffic is inconsistent with surrounding uses, specifically 30 single-family homes. This section of the application discusses plans to address traffic, including access roads, parking lots in the campground, upgrades to Marston Road, and references to the traffic study for the Maine Department of Transportation to address the impact to Route 113. Nowhere in this section was there a reference to the impact of projected traffic increase to Senator Black Road. The projected traffic trip rate for peak hour, weekend hours, projected 165 trips per hour on a typical summer Saturday, effectively 2.5 trips per minute. In fact, the intensity of the proposed use, including the amount and type of traffic to be generated compared with the surrounding uses on Senator Black Road, is inconsistent and far exceeds comparisons to surrounding uses. As such, As written, the application fails to meet this criteria or condition. Subsection 1C, the potential generation of noise, dust, odor, vibration, glare, smoke, litter, and other nuisances. Response. In this section, the applicant only addresses the noise, dust, odor, etc. associated with the actual project's construction. The applicant fails to address in the section any noise, dust, vibration, and any other related to the use of any recreational ATVs and dirt bikes. These recreational vehicles will undoubtedly create enough noise to be significant nuisances to both abutting and non-abutting homeowners on Senator Black Road. As written, the application fails to meet this criteria. Subsection 1D, unusual physical characteristics of the site, including size of the lot, shape of the lot, topography, and soil, which may tend to aggravate impacts on the surrounding property. Response. In this section, the applicant notes that most of the development is far from any existing development. Of course, this is incorrect, and we would question what the applicant defines as development. The single-family homes on Senator Black Road, both abutting and not abutting, must be considered when documenting the impact of the site. The ingress and egress of bus-sized vehicles alone on a simple two-lane country road will most certainly impact surrounding property. The applicant has failed to address the impact to the surrounding properties and homes, and as a result, the applicant fails to meet this condition. Section 2. The planning board shall consider facilities. Subsection 2A, the ability of traffic to safely move into and out of the site at the proposed location. Response. The applicant's response in this section only addresses internal road plans on the actual property. The application does reference the traffic study performed by Bill Ray, but only in reference to the application for the MDOT permit. There is no discussion or commentary in this section of the significant increase in traffic or size of the vehicles entering and exiting the property on Senator Black Road. This is a significant issue with no associated discussion or proposed plan. As a result, the application fails to meet the condition. Subsection 2B, the capacity of the street network to accommodate the proposed use. Response. In this section, the applicant has only addressed the street network in the actual property. Changes to internal circulation, emergency access, and parking locations are referenced, but only as it relates to internal road width. Most certainly, the purpose of this standard was to better understand the capacity of the existing street network to handle the expected size and quantity of expected traffic. As a result, in our opinion, the applicant failed to meet this condition. In summary, then, for the record, because the applicant failed to adequately address these items in its application, the planning board does not have an adequately developed record in which to base its determination as to whether the conditional use factors have or have not been met, and as such, cannot make a decision at this time. So, let's pause a moment, take a step back. In our view, the applicant has failed to address some key components of the conditional use standard. As such, we must ask the planning board why we are rushing into this. The town must understand the impact of the enormous project on our community and what is clearly a residential road with new homes being built every year. So here's our ask. We would ask the planning board for a peer review of the traffic study. Many towns require a second look at the impact of traffic. Considering the traffic concerns related to this project, a second opinion would not be unreasonable. We also think that we can all agree that most patrons of this campground will be traveling from either out of state or from the major north-south access highways to the south. As such, the primary access point via Senator Black Road will be the south entrance. Given this fact, we must understand the traffic impact associated with most of the traffic entering from this one direction. And I understand the traffic study was performed in the month of October, and we would ask that the study be repeated in one of the summer months, and that a peer review also be done in the summer months. And it is likely the state will ask for this review. So, with so much uncertainty and anxiety around this project, can we consider a pause? The planning board could recommend a pause or a moratorium for 180 days, but up to a year, according to Title 309A, Section 4356. The town can call a special meeting within 7 days to approve this moratorium. And if there's enough support, then the moratorium will allow for time to obtain the additional information needed. Lastly, and probably importantly, we are concerned that the current conditional use standards, when created, could not foresee every scenario that may present in the future, and as such are guidelines. It is reasonable, and in fact prudent, to revisit these conditional use standards or guidelines at regular intervals. The moratorium would allow us enough time to, if appropriate, amend the conditional use standards, and any change to those standards would apply to the pending application. So I appreciate the fact that you didn't ask questions along the way, let me get through that, but what I wanted you to see is that we took the time to read each one of those conditions or standards, and we don't feel that the answers were sufficient and need additional investigation for the board to make.
Can you shut this off?
Might be able to.
He is a bit touched on last time, and one wasn't technically.
We can't possibly. Thank you, Wes.
As Mark wasn't present at the last public hearing, so he didn't have the benefit of hearing some of the discussion or what other points were made, because he wasn't, here on that evening. I think the feel was, in the discussion last week, or I'll say my sense of it, was that other, proceedings and other subsequent or parallel application processes are happening at the state level as well as the planning board level, and that includes the traffic study and the DPEA or the DEA piece for the environmental impact. Those pieces are ongoing as well, and the information, though, even though those might be simultaneous permit processes, is really critical to whether or not the application as currently pending before you really answers every question and provides adequate information. So I think what you're hearing us say is, even though this process has been ongoing for a long period of time, and it is certainly not a sense that you're rushing into, in the fact that you got the application yesterday and here we are taking a vote. It's that we don't have the data really needed to know. If we can't sit here and answer whether or not the traffic is going to be X or Y during the months in which the campground is going to operate, if we haven't looked at the difference between the proposed site here versus Acres of Wildlife, which ingress and egress is directly off of 113. There's no residential neighborhood road or small neighborhood road. Those are key things we haven't really penetrated in terms of real statistical data, real facts and information. So I think this feels very preliminary, and we're asking that while there's time and effort and a lot of resources being applied to this process, that we just don't have enough information to even evaluate whether the applicant has or has not met the conditions. We don't know that yet, and we're asking you to wait until you have a sufficiently developed record before you make the determination whether, in your view, those conditions are met.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask where you are from and why you have this, why you made this and are here for this? Do you live on that road?
Senator Black Road.
Okay.
And we're in a butter.
So you feel like all this red is your opinion? Is that
That's
what
correct, yes. I think that's what a public hearing is for us to provide our opinion.
Hearsay, okay. Thank you.
Well, let me clarify one thing, just to make clear. So the application itself that, Nature's Wildlife presented to the planning board, the actual application that the applicant submitted for consideration, that's a public document. So we were able to read through what the applicant submitted to the planning board. So the references that say the applicant's response that's from the applicant's application. There are places where that's our interpretation of what is listed in the application, but we did physically review the entire application. So,
And we responded to those areas we felt were insufficient or inadequate or didn't, meet the standard, at least in our view.
or incomplete, but it does say in our opinion for that reason. So we're not speaking for anyone else.
Is there anyone else?
Thank you, Sue. I'm really impressed with this, Mark and Teresa. You covered some of the points I wanted to make. But first, I'd like to say something that will shock people, and so maybe I should turn so I can see Gary when I say this. I support having a campground on the former Camp Twain land. I think it's an excellent land use. And I like what's happened with the development of the plan. The first plan, we've seen 5 plans. Is that right? 5. So we've seen 5, and you know, they were very sprawling and they're all over the place. And this is more what modern land use theory is. You concentrate the use, so you leave land available for the critters and the plants and the neighbors. You leave a buffer. It's all this stuff. They finally got this down to what looks good to me. My problems are the ones that Mark pointed out. This application is not complete. As Mark said, it's a traffic study of Route 113 and Route 5, the effect of this campground on 113 and Route 5. And Mr. Bray said, you know, I'm going to have to do one in the summer because this isn't any good. You know, the one from October of 2017 doesn't work. They've had 2 years since then. I'm sure that there was discussion between Mr. Bray and Nature's Wilderness about the inadequacy of doing a study in October to predict what happens in July. I would ask that the board adjourn consideration, come up with Lee J, find us a way to just set this aside to give the applicant time to put together a real application. I'd also like to talk about a concern I have about enforcement. You know, I asked Gary, you know, how many violations of the condition of the land use ordinance do you have? And he said, oh, I got a file about that quick.
Had a file, we've rectified everything that's there.
Has rectified everything?
What?
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything's up to snuff right now. No question. I'm just talking about, I don't have a file of any violations. You know, Mark doesn't, Gary doesn't, the sergeants don't. You know, most people don't have files at any time that get that thick. Most people don't have the state coming and telling them to restore land back to what it was before they cleared it next to a pond. Most people don't have the state coming in and saying, you poured a foundation, you must destroy it, tear it out. And I'm mentioning these things because I want to say, I've got a problem believing that once they get a conditional use permit, they will abide by it. Right now, it costs $150 to apply for a conditional use permit. It costs $100 if you violate your conditional use permit. It's cheaper to not get a permit if you're going to do something bad for one day, like have an event for 1,500 people. It's cheaper to just say, hey, that's the cost of a permit now. It's lowered to $100. I don't have to go to $150. This is something that needs to get straightened out. I think the people here who are concerned, the people who live on Senator Black Road are concerned, would like to know, like to have the town tell them why we can have confidence that Nature's Wilderness will abide by their conditional use permit. I don't think that's a lot to ask. I started asking the selectmen in November, could we increase the fine? You know, 4 years ago, we increased the application fee for a conditional use permit from $25 to $150, which is times 6. And we didn't touch the fine for violating the ordinance. And I asked for times 6, which is what? $600. Amazing. And they were behind me, and then when I talked to them on day before yesterday, they're not so hot on the idea of increasing that fine. So I'm asking you, as a planning board, to ask for this to get straightened out. Now, another thing that happened at the selectmen's meeting, we heard from Wes about how he can't enforce the land use ordinance. He gives them a letter, and then he gives them another letter, and then he gives them a third letter, and he can't do anything until he gives them the third letter. And basically, and I can't believe that Portland, South Portland, Wyndham, Cape Elizabeth are operating in the same way. And Gary said, no, in Cape Elizabeth, they give you a piece of paper and you do what they tell you. Well, we know in Baldwin, they give you a piece of paper and in Cornish, what do they do, drop it on the ground? You know, so this is another thing that really has to be considered urgently by the planning board. I would ask you to ask our lawyer, the town lawyer, what do we do to our ordinance to make it so that we can have confidence that people who have a conditional use permit are going to abide by the permit? I don't know how to say this. I mean, it's whatever the solution. I was thinking fines. It may not be fines. Gary suggested we have some mechanism where we take his conditional use permit away if he doesn't abide by it. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know what is legal, what mechanism we can have. But I would ask you to adjourn consideration of this permit until it is more complete, looking at what Mr. Chappett has put down here, and to take that time to make it possible to have a believable land use ordinance. It's not believable now.
Says the man who's been on the planning board since the 1990s.
True.
That's more weight to what you're saying.
I just wanted to kind of correct the record a little bit. Because under state law, I mean, from SMPDC's book that we put together for all of the land use people across the state, and it is a state law, and under the state law and the enforcement, minimum violation fine is $100, but you can fine up to $2,500 per day per violation.
2,500.
Yes. Yes. Just to kind of set that straight.
So we could, DJ, if I could interpret that?
Yep.
I just want to be really clear because I'd like the two selectmen here to be clear. We don't have to pass any ordinance, we don't have to do anything in town.
No, in fact, your ordinances already say that you're gonna that you would comply with section 4452, which is enforcement of land use laws and ordinances under the state law.
So $100 is only minimum. It can be up to $2,500
Per violation per day.
Thank you. That encourages me a great deal.
So, Lisa, I have a question for you. So Mr. Pierce had the same question I had, which I think was going to, do we have to go to the public meeting, the town meeting in March? As the ordinance, that's usually the way that we amend the ordinance, right? People
Correct.
Put this in, but you're saying that the ordinance says that, it's limiting us to just following whatever you just read is. So how does that, in fact, get changed? Is that a planning board, decision, or does that need to be back to the people?
No, that's just a matter of the code enforcement officer deciding how he's gonna fine the violation.
Does the state law say that a discretion is up to the CEO or the selectmen, or who?
That's who, the CEO is certified individual under state law, has to be certified under state law. And their purpose of being is to uphold the land use laws for the state and for local ordinances.
Your question was how you change the ordinance, not to enforce the existing one, or not?
If you
No,
want,
no,
right,
my
if you want the
question was,
ordinances
we don't need to
changed,
use the ordinance, we don't need the ordinance to be changed.
right, if you did want the ordinance to be changed, you would need to amend your ordinance and go to town meeting and have.
We would only need to do that if we wanted it to be $2,600 a day.
I don't know if you can go above the state law, I didn't go look at that.
Trying to define the discussion.
Right. Of course, that works.
I need to, chirp in a little bit and add to this enforcement, dilemma here. Everybody has their rights. I cannot walk into a place, waltz into a place and stop somebody from doing something. There's a process to go on. Writing the 3 letters is part of it. $100, there is applicable $100 fine. How that works is, I believe the wording is, every day is another offense. You find them $100, continues on a second day, now it's $200, third day, $300, up to $2,500, up to 25 days. Now,
Up to $2,500 per violation per day.
okay, per violation. So
Per
you
day.
have a violation,
That's what he,
I have to reread it anyhow. So, in writing these letters, I may insert, by such and such a date, you will have it corrected, or a fine will begin. So that's established. We don't start collecting $100 there. Nothing is done until it's taken to court and the judge says he's fine. How it goes to court is the selectmen, after 3 warnings, if nothing results, I turn it to the selectmen. They decide whether to take it to court or not, whether to spend the money or not. Consult their town attorney, see if it's a winnable case or not. And once it goes to court, once the judge makes a judgment, that's when the fine is levied. That's how it works.
So, could I follow up here? So if somebody had an event, and these people had, and they canceled, an event for somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people, if they had that event, and it's $100 to $2,500 a day, and you go with the first letter on the first day, and the second letter on the second day, and the third day, they're not in violation anymore. That doesn't make sense to me as the person who has 1,000 cars going by his house. It doesn't make sense. And I would like you to consult our town lawyer on this, to find out how we can make it work.
So, under Article 4, Section 4.4 violations, your regulations do say, that the fine is levied at $100 per day. It does not say, in conformance with Article 44 to 52 of the state law. So you would want to amend that.
If per day up to a maximum $2,500. If it's a second occurrence, they get fined or whatever, and later on in the year they do it again, then it doubles, goes up to $5,000. Or if the offense is in a shoreland zone or a resource protection zone, then it's a heavier fine.
what article was that? Just
It's Article 4, Section 4.4 violations.
Could I suggest, I need another, Sue, I'm sorry. Somebody else
Give
wants
you
to
one
go.
more minute.
So I don't care what the mechanism is that gives us this confidence. Posting a bond might be a method. I mean, that's why I'm looking for legal counsel to tell me what kind of method can we do that will give Kathy some confidence that these people will not violate the land use ordinance. Because I have no confidence right now.
I need to insert this. you made a mention in the discussion, how come, Falmouth or Westbrook, they can get instant results? Well, if we're a bigger town, we employ 2 or 3 attorneys on our staff, and we had,
I
legal,
was gonna say the same thing.
access immediately all the time, I'm sure it would happen that way.
Good point. It doesn't give me much confidence, does it, Wes?
Money talks.
Perhaps move to Cape Breton then.
All right, so it seems to me that what we've been discussing the last few minutes is about trust and enforcement. Is there anybody else that wants to speak to that point before we move on to other points that people would like to talk about tonight?
Just a couple of comments. I have been coming since pretty much this whole thing started. And you're right, it is a question of trust. And when Glenda Metcalf was here this fall, she mentioned the word respect. And to me, that is huge. And it was like a light bulb going off. And the other light bulb that is going off after all of these years and all of the discussion was after I'd gone to visit Mr. Efron about the campground to see if there was something we could work out if I wasn't understanding things correctly. And this was at least 2.5 years ago. And he told me that the plan was, because he owned Deacon's Road, the plan was to have the entrance to the campground down Deacon's Road, and I left feeling, well, you know, maybe this whole thing will work until I got home and was told by someone else, don't forget he's a gambler and he does not own Deacon's Road. There has never been anything that has come forth to me as being truthful. I know there have been a couple of planning board members that were threatened with bodily harm from Mr. Efron. I know Mr. Efron was very vocal about wanting to sue the town for every penny that we had, and he couldn't because he was so wealthy. When he was frustrated with the planning board, when in fact it was his not getting his act together and doing things correctly that was causing a holdup from his getting his permit. I was told by Gary that there'd be 2 events a year. There were already 3 scheduled. Yes, they were canceled, but that was after there was a big uproar about it. And it is a matter of respect and a matter of trust. And worry about what's going to happen to my property on Senator Black. And I think that's a concern of all of us here. You know, my animals do live across the road. I am old. Sooner or later I have to be in a Granny pod with my kids. How do I sell my land and be able to afford a Granny pod? All of those things come into play, but from the very beginning, there has been nothing but mistrust and dishonesty and a lack of respect for the town, for the planning board, for almost anyone involved. And that does frighten me.
Anyone else who would like to speak? Gary?
Yeah, I have a question for Gary. I heard a while back that if it did not become a campground, that there would be a subdivision housing development. Was that just a scare tactic, or is that an option or an alternative you're looking at if the campground were not to develop? You know?
It wasn't a scare tactic at all. It was talked about as an alternative. Have all the land, if we can't put a campground on it, financially we have to do something.
Okay, so that's the only point that I'm throwing out there, is that obviously if you wind up rejecting the campground, he's entitled to try and recoup some of the expense for the land. However, he'd have to go through the process with the planning board in terms of subdivision, housing, and whatever. What did you anticipate the number of houses that you'd be looking at putting in there?
We didn't really talk that in depth about it. We really want the campground. That's what our whole focus is on, is the campground.
Yeah. So that would be a concern for the town, is if you wind up with approximately 25, 30, 40 houses or whatever, 2.5 children to the school district and whatever, so you gotta look at the whole thing. I mean, you can't just be television, because, you know, then all of a sudden you're gonna complain about that. That's the only point I want to make, is that, you know, playing the devil's advocate here, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but.
Any new voices?
Well, it seems like we've already
covered a couple of more items tonight that need answering, that weren't part of the original discussion, such as how we're gonna enforce it and the traffic studies we knew about. So it seems that the request to, I don't know whether we would table this or how we would, but not act upon it until we get all of the answers that we need, including the ones that have come up just recently tonight.
Would that require a moratorium, or is it a pause that we can take? Because I'm not sure how that would happen.
I don't think our role tonight is really to answer your questions, it's for us to hear from you. So I think we've heard a lot. We might still have some more to hear, but we will be considering all of those things and certainly talking to participants. Joe?
Quite often, people look at things that come in front of the planning board and they think that the planning board considers it up or down, yes or no, and that's not what the planning board does. I hope that what the planning board does, what I always tried to do, was to try to make the best outcome for everybody. And this applicant has not cooperated with that objective. So, but I hope that the planning board is able to do that and approaches this in that way, not will we have a campground or will we have a development or will we have nothing or no, it's like how do we do this in the best way so that Nature's Wilderness can survive as an economic entity and be successful, and so can the neighborhood. It's a balancing act.
Larry, did you have your hand up? No?
Are you speaking?
Yeah. Did you have your hand up?
Not very
No.
high, not very
No.
high.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment? This is your opportunity.
I just wanted to, what Mr. Efford did say at our meeting at his house a couple of years ago is that if this whole thing wasn't approved, he could and would sell the whole acreage to Shaw's, and it would become a gravel pit. He's playing cards, I'm sure, but.
One of the mechanisms, I'm sorry, Sue.
No.
One of the mechanisms that the planning board has used in friendly situations to call a pause to consideration is to say to the applicant, okay, you heard what happened at the public meeting, you've heard of what we're going to be considering. Do you want us to consider and have a vote at our next meeting or not? Because if the planning board holds a vote, then there can be no consideration of an application that looks similar to this one for 2 years. So usually the applicant at that point says, let's back off for a little while until we straighten out those issues. It's possible that if you ask Gary how he felt about that, he might ask for the pause. I don't know.
Any other input? Your last call? Oh, you have to.
Mark and Teresa, when you talk about a peer review, can you clarify that for us? Because I want you to know that Lee J. Feldman from the Southern Maine Planning Commission here, he was hired by the planning board, being paid for by the applicant to actually review the submission. And, so we try to go outside the planning board, not just rely on our own expertise or lack thereof to get a second opinion. And I have to indicate to you that we did get a response from Lee J. that I believe you said that the CUP was actually complete enough, not whether it deserved approval or not, but that in terms of him reading it, that it was now okay for the planning board to consider.
So, yeah, so just so folks understand, part of the whole process from a legal standpoint, and the way things have evolved through the courts and through the processes at the state level is that most towns, and this town does, have a list in their, ordinance that says you must submit X, Y, and Z. Submitting X, Y, and Z qualifies the application to be complete. That doesn't mean that the information is satisfactory to the planning board, that additional questions need to be made, but it allows the planning board to then start working the process of review. So just because it's complete doesn't mean that the data is 100% accurate or that the board shouldn't ask for additional data.
That's exactly the point I was hoping you'd make.
Right.
And I want you to understand one thing. You say here, as such, we must ask the planning board why we're rushing into this. We are not rushing into this, okay? This started 3 years ago. At some point, you have to fish or cut bait. And given my limited experience on the planning board, my perspective is that this process is working exactly as it should. That after one push off on a CUP, submit again, and umpteen versions of that, buku plans from their environmental analysts, involvement from the DEP, the DOT, everything going on. 3 years. At some point, with Lee J's help, we have to say, okay, are we ready to evaluate this now? And the public hearing process has been wonderful. This type of input from the public is exactly what is needed for the planning board to do its job, okay? Which does not mean that we're rushing into a thumbs up or a thumbs down, okay? So I want to share one other thing with you from the land use ordinance. And it's Article 8.5, reapplication, and I'm going to read it. If the planning board shall deny a conditional use application, a second request of similar nature shall not be brought before the planning board within 2 years from the date of the first request, unless in the opinion of the majority of the planning board, substantial new evidence can be brought forward, or unless the planning board finds that an error of law or misunderstanding of facts has been made, or unless amendment has been made to this ordinance which changes the status, circumstances, or conditions of the matter which was brought before the planning board. So the idea of a pause or a moratorium is one path forward. The second path forward is what Joe mentioned, and that is that observant and astute applicants sometimes read the will of the people and the issues that have been brought up and request, that they pull the CUP back for changes that can be made to it. The other path is that, if enough of these issues aren't satisfactory to the planning board, it can be denied and put in abeyance for 2 years. So please, I don't want to have the record for the town or the people here at the public hearing leave with the feeling that the planning board is rushing into anything.
I will let my wife speak for me, but I have 2 questions. One, the first was on the peer review, and I want to make sure we address that question. And I would say only that that is a wonderful, explanation. I would say we are late to the game, right? I feel like we're late to the game because we weren't here, 3 years ago or 2 years ago when this all started. And so for us, it feels like it's rushing in some way. And so, so thank you for those options. I would let my wife speak to the second opinion, which is the peer, which we're talking about as a peer review.
Can occur on the traffic impact study. So you can independently, look for after, if through the DOT process, or the applicant decides, as Bill Gray talked about last time, to do a new traffic study in a summer month, or if the main state requires that to occur, available to you as the town is to conduct an independent peer review of that traffic study, to make sure that it's captured in the scope that you can.
Yeah, let's check on one thing. There was supposed to be a meeting in January with the DOT that Lee J, at the last meeting, you volunteered to attend.
Correct.
Has that occurred?
No, I haven't even been notified from the DOT yet that is moving forward.
Okay.
But I will follow up a little bit with what these folks said, in that, as you hired me, and I'm assisting you with basically the process and the review, if, traffic is certainly the biggest issue that seems to be out there, from the last portion of the public hearing as well. You can, and I can assist you with that, I do that in many other towns as well. Hire a third party, another traffic engineer from another consulting firm, to review all of Bill Bray's work, and suggest that additional information may be required, that Mr. Bray's information is inaccurate in some part. They would review all of the technical traffic information and make additional recommendations above and beyond anything I could do for you.
And I would follow up and say that in no way am I challenging Bill Gray's credentials. I think he gave a great presentation. He's very well respected in his field. He's just very pleasant and knowledgeable. I think what you hear us saying is please take advantage of every resource to ensure that we have turned over every rock and uncovered everything and that we need to. And I think sort of back to along the lines of what Joe was saying, at the end of the day, I mean, he said he supports a campground. I'm still a little bit scared of a 300-site campground on my road, but let's say that the idea of a family campground in our area, I can see where that could be a nice use versus a gravel pit with some large piece of property. I'm not ready to say I'm excited about that idea, but I think how we develop the trust and how we come to the public support for this project has a lot to do with, like Joe was saying, comfortable with how this is going to be enforced. It's also comfortable as it relates to our investments in our property, our land values, how our daily life is going to change, what those traffic impacts are going to be. And while I think Bill's presentation was extremely informative, very helpful, very thorough in the right of what it was, he admittedly said, I looked at this in October 2 years ago, so us saying don't rush into it, is not to suggest that this hasn't been a long 3-year process that everybody has invested in. It's not that extent. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. There's still a lot of data that we would hope that you would consider. There's a lot of additional resources available to you. There is more analytics, more facts, more development, more concrete, more resources for peer review that it's, at the end of the day, if what we all get to is a campground, that it's the right one, the right way, in sort of the right place at the right time, and just wanting to walk that path in a very cohesive, thoughtful, deliberate, and careful way.
And I would only say that I didn't get to see the presentation, but, the fact that the traffic may come in one entrance way more than the other, and that may not have been evaluated, that suggests to me that maybe we need maybe there's some other things that haven't been looked at, and perhaps a second opinion when traffic is such a big component of this project. would be warranted.
Is there any other public comment?
Can I support the challenge here? So, one of the things that both engineers for the project brought up, the possibility that a turnout lane would be needed. It's possible that a turnout lane would be needed, and it's possible the state already owns the land. But if the state doesn't own the land, there is only one person in the whole wide world who could sell them any land on that end of Senator Blackburn. And I think she might influence the decision. But, I think it would be good to know, do we need a turnout lane? And if we do, does Nature's Wilderness have enough money to buy one?
Gary?
To the turnout lane thing, after the last meeting, I was surprised at the 165 trips an hour as well. So I met with Bill Bray on the property after that, he mentioned the turnout lane. And I said, no, we don't wanna go down that route, financially it's not gonna happen. He talked about turnout lanes on Senator Black, I'm like, no, we don't want that to happen. Tell us what we have to do to abide by, to make the road work, getting in and out, whether it be smaller campsite, who knows? We're working on that, that's why I asked to be taken off the agenda tonight, because we need more information. Because 165 trips an hour does not make sense to me at all. That means, just hypothetically say we were up and running with 300 sites, over half the campground is gonna leave in an hour and come back, it doesn't work. I'm not opposed to a second opinion on traffic study, I don't argue that at all. We just have some things to work out, and that's what we're working on. But no, there'll be no traffic turnouts, anything like that on the road. If the site needs that, we'll redesign to accommodate.
So I would just like to make one more comment. It was almost impossible to deal with Mr. Akron, obviously. And Gary has tried his darndest to be compliant with everything that's been asked and gone over and above in some areas. I agree with Joe, it is a perfect place for a campground. Do I like that? Not particularly. I have a camper. Use it for work more than anything else, but it doesn't make sense to do anything else with that land. And it's just making sure that we're all taken care of comfortably in order to have that happen and us be happy. And I do want to thank you, Gary. We started off knocking heads a few times, but you have definitely tried your best to make this whole thing work as well. And I hope it works for you. I really do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Yeah.
One thing David brought up one time in response to someone's question is staging the campground. Like if it starts with 30, then it goes to 60, and it goes to, I mean, is there, he was gonna find out about that, something about it. Did that ever come out?
I don't know, we have the answer. I mean, we have a site application in front of us,
Okay.
but I will ask the question about that later. Gary?
To reply to that, we're fine growing in stages. Financially, we'd have to grow in stages. To go in there and develop a 300 site campground, it's not in the cards. But to open with 30, 40, 50, depends on where it is, and grow every year, I'm not opposed to that at all. I want to work with everybody to make it happen. We all need to work together. We're all in the same game.
And that's something we'll probably be talking to.
Sue, in the minutes, I think I read that, Lee J told us last meeting that the planning board has the, power to, request, review, and approve a CUP in stages and to, set forth certain conditions, before the next stage would be, reviewed and approved.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, you could work with the applicant, hopefully, that they would say, we're gonna do 50 lots or units, in the first 2 years or what have you, and then we could condition approval to evaluate that phase and how it's operating prior to allowing phase 2 to occur, prior to allowing phase 3 to occur. many phases they may have. Yes, we can, hopefully working with the applicant, we could, if we get to that point, we can condition the application on certain process to occur for phasing.
Right, procedurally, yes, we have worked about that. At this point, we just have
You could do it independently, but I think I'm hearing Gary say there's a willingness to do that, and I think it's a matter of seeing if there's something reasonable to come to terms with on the number of units in the phase, and then it's a matter of how long before the second phase, how long before the third phase, and what are the performance standards we would need to see prior to approving that phase to be constructed.
I wonder if one of the solutions to the 165 cars an hour problem, to flatten out the ebb and flow of traffic, so to speak, might be administrative on the campground's part, rather than to give people time slots to check in and check out in such a way that everybody doesn't have to come in 1 2-hour stretch. Could be an administrative matter. People with names that start with N through Z come in the afternoons. I don't know what it is.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Because I worked at Point Sebago for years. It's very difficult when you've got people coming from all over the place, and the amount of traffic in Maine in the summer to force somebody into a time slot. They're never gonna make it on their time slot.
Traffic in Maine in the summer, everywhere, so it can be in Baldwin, so we can have more business.
But I mean, to tell them that you've got a time slot to check in at 2 to 4 o'clock, good luck trying to make that. If you're coming from Massachusetts or New Hampshire, and you've gotta go through
I
the
think
road.
traffic was the issue.
Yeah.
Traffic in Maine in the summer.
Can I ask a question about that? You said you worked at Point Sebago?
Yeah.
How many sites were over there?
I don't even remember.
Ballpark.
But, how many?
Ballpark? I'm
I
asking.
can't even remember, honest to God, because it was like, 15, 20 years ago, before I moved here,
Okay, was it?
when I was in college and after that. But I'd say there's a little over 100
Okay. And did you see like huge traffic on 100 sites?
on Saturday morning. But,
So
and that's when people were hauling in their trailers, trying to get them set in the sites, and people would go off in the ditch and all that stuff, so it was very lively in the office.
I'm just trying to base it off other suggestions, and like Acres of Wildlife right down the street,
Yeah.
in existence for years.
Yeah.
I've never seen more than a few vehicles in and out of there, and it's relatively the same size that we're projecting. And a lot of people live in the area. There's not a lot of traffic coming in and out of there at all. The traffic study doesn't make sense to me. I need to clarify that for myself and for you people, because it's just 165 trips an hour does not make sense. It wouldn't work on our end. I'm picturing myself 80 cars in, 80 cars out in an hour. You could not do that in a campground. It just doesn't make sense.
You wouldn't have enough room to put 80 cars lined up.
Right.
They'd be way out on the center block, right? It doesn't,
So I'm trying to base it like off Acres of Wildlife. They're almost the same size. I've lived in this area for years and years. I've never seen more than 3 on a Saturday pulling out of there, and that's probably pushing it. I mean, we're all from the area, we've seen it. Yep.
I need to opinionate a little bit about the traffic. First of all, this statistic of 165 per hour is not consistent. There might be, say, a sign-in time is on Saturday, maybe between 9 and 12, you're gonna get a bulk of traffic at a rate of you won't get 165 in 1 hour. Maybe for 10 minutes, you may get 25, and there'll be 15 minutes natural lull, and another 10 minutes so peak valley for 3 hours. Early in the morning, late in the afternoon, less. You also have to realize that the camp is operating from May 1st to October 31st. May and June, May's gonna be low, build up. Your July and August is the peak of the bell curve, and September, October dies down. So you're really looking at July and August as a traffic heading if it's gonna happen. And it's spotty also. 6 months is not there. If we have a subdivision of 100 houses, low density population, 3 acres per house, 100 to 300 acres, and he has 800 acres out there, that's not unreasonable. You're gonna get traffic going to and from work every day for 12 months a year.
Going back to
So there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and this 100 very spotty and isolated. Okay.
I think regardless of how many you have going in, you have campers with trailers. We have a rural country road, which is, iffy at times with 2 large vehicles going by each other. These are people coming in from out of the area, they're not familiar. I think that is really as much of a problem as anything. Whether the road needs to be made wider, whether there has to be law enforcement that's there, at least initially. And signing, I think that signing certainly would have to be present, but that's sort of an understood, I think, probably.
Okay, now I will say something. Okay, I've heard a lot of comments on ordinances and sections and things like that, and details. For me, a resident on Senator Black Road, the reason why I'm on Senator Black Road is because we moved over from Parsons Field on Route 160, a state road. We were looking for some place that was a quiet road, off the road, that for our grandkids and things like that, there was not the a big concern for all the traffic. Our old house was right in front of the road. And so, for me, why all these other details are beside the point to me. I am, bottom line, against any increase in traffic on my road. Amen. Period.
Jackie?
Has anybody been over, I think it's Danforth Bay, do you know Danforth Bay in Freedom? It's, I think, 230 camping spots. You need to go by on a small road by a lot of houses in order to get in there. I have to say, it's a very well-run campground. They have glamping cabins on the lake. They have pull-through, easy for me to get the camper in and out of parking spaces. They have over 55 section. They have family with kids and playground sections. They have rangers that have games and activities going all day long for the kids, and it's very well run, and nobody seems to mind that traffic. And I hate to say that because I don't want anybody on my road either. But, you know, it's different than Nature's Wilderness or whatever it is down here, because it's more upscale. And it's very nice. My kids borrowed my camper 3 years ago, and they spent a week there, and I went to visit them in my camper, and I was impressed with it. Not to say that I want any traffic on my road, but, you know, it sounds like exactly what you're trying to do. I think the people that own it is Purity Springs, and they have King Pine and that whole area there. Anyway, they're pretty well respected in that area. But it might be worth it, Garrett, to go over and talk to them and see that campground. It's,
No, I wouldn't oppose that, because I wanna make our road work for everybody.
yeah, and this surprisingly does. Maybe they've bent over backwards to make everybody happy that is, you know, living in the area. I don't know, but it does seem to work.
Acres of Wildlife works too, I mean.
And I've never been down there.
Small road going in, dirt road going in.
Yeah.
I don't know how far it is, it's probably.
It's pretty far. You and I went down
Lake
there,
Erie.
and there isn't a lot of housing. It's much different than Senator Black.
But aren't the ditches and stuff wider and stuff there?
Yeah,
I've been in
it
there
is.
too, but, you know, with
Yeah.
The dirt road going in is not very wide at all.
And it's flat.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
So it doesn't have all the ditches and things that we have.
Yeah, the only other point I'd make, the observation, comparing the, acres of wildlife, this entrance up here, Senator Black, I think they have the luxury of, I mean, part of our problem with 113 is you got the idiots of the world and the people from New Hampshire, and everybody's in such a hell of a hurry. You got people passing on turns, you're gonna pass on the hill. You're gonna pass it, here's a straight line, and they will pass 7 cars to get up so they get their coffee over at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. It's not important. But down here, they have the luxury of Steep Falls Village, so everybody is at a slow pace as they're coming in or they're leaving. They get into Acres of Wildlife, and they're up down here when they're making that turn by Sanborn's or wherever and coming down over the hill, and now you've got a camper. And I mean, we had the same conversation when we were talking about Shaw Brothers putting, buying the land for a quarry, and now you're coming down over the hill, and here's some dump trucks, and I don't know how you slow people down to drive a normal speed. So that's part of your challenge there, is if that's your only access in, is that spot there.
Right, and that's what Bill Bray looked at, was the site path and the study and everything. And everybody's concerned about the October study. You probably did it in the busiest week out there, October, Project Fair, everybody going up through. So, I mean, we're working on that. We are definitely working on the traffic study. That's the biggest concern.
So I have a question for Gary. You asked to be taken off the agenda for tonight. Does that mean likely put on next meeting's agenda to?
I'll let David Strock know when we're ready. We gotta get more information. There's no sense coming in, wasting your time, these people's time, until we have answers for you. It'll be relatively quick. We're working on it.
So, I'm wondering something to myself, about the public hearing process relative to the CUP. Things seem to be in flux, and it wouldn't seem appropriate to end the public hearing phase of this project after tonight to say we're done, when it sounds like there is more going on that could change the CUP submission, to the point where, we don't even know when they're gonna be back on the agenda again. So, I guess, thinking here as I'm talking, is it feasible to put the public hearing process on pause and then, start it up again if and when we get more information or renewed information on the CUP? Joe?
Yeah, I would just,
Lee J?
I would before you end tonight, I'd make a motion to postpone the public hearing to a date uncertain.
Okay.
And that way you haven't closed the public hearing. You don't want to close the public hearing.
Right.
So we're going to postpone it, and then we're going to table action on the application until they're ready to come back. But you don't want to close the public hearing, you just want to postpone it.
Because as soon as you close it, you have 35 days to issue a decision.
Correct. Correct. Unless the applicant agrees, and I think the applicant would agree, but that's all, it becomes a dance that you're doing there with everything, so. I would postpone the public hearing and table the application.
Should there be some substantial, change in the application? Would we have an opportunity then to do a second public hearing, or is that?
Well, that's why you would just, at this point, you postpone it. Let's wait and see what they come back with.
So the language would be, then we would notice the continuation of the public hearing.
Yes. Perfect.
For today, it would be postponing it to a date uncertain that would be noticed publicly.
Correct.
Nice.
Is there anyone else that would like to give that information, that we will be doing this again in the future? Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight?
I think possibly there should be more traffic in the construction of this campground. Gravel trucks, cement trucks, people working to get the job done. And you're going to see a higher amount of traffic for several years if it takes that long to build this campground up. And just today, there's probably about six gravel trucks back and forth. There's trucks that's hauling electrical poles back and forth. There's utility trucks. There's electric. All services are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's mainly going to the campground for construction. And this is going to be a long process. And that's where you're going to get more traffic than you will have after it's settled down. And the campers won't be any problem at all.
That's something. He's doing a meeting and study that's going to be happening this summer.
Yes.
They will take that into consideration. Not just the everyday
Construction traffic?
Construction.
They're not gonna look specifically at construction traffic because that's really an unknown as to how many trips. There's no data out there. It really depends on the site that you're working with and whatnot. But what they will do is they're gonna look at background traffic that's out there already. And that's part of the consideration, but not construction traffic.
That 165 number that they been knocking around, that included the so-called background existing traffic?
No, that was
Increase,
just the
the
trip,
increase.
that was just the increase by trips by the campground. Yes.
Gary?
You sure that didn't include anything to do with the traffic that was already existing?
Yeah, no, I don't believe this was peak hour traffic that was being generated by the campground.
Okay.
I was not including background traffic.
How do you tell the difference?
Yeah, how do you tell the difference?
You raise your hand.
Thank you. All right, is there, Matt?
Mark and Teresa, do you have this document electronically? Can you send it to Nickel? What's that?
I think every time you make a great.
I'm helping you.
I know you are.
Yeah, yeah, and that way we'll incorporate it in the minutes. Great, thank you.
I just have one thing, did anybody get this in their mailbox? So I don't know who did that, but that's against the law, and I don't want other people other than the mailman or my family in my mailbox. So usually, if somebody's an attorney, they might know if they can't go into somebody's mailbox. That's all.
What was in your mailbox?
The notice about this hearing tonight. By a neighbor, a concerned neighbor. I don't want a concerned neighbor in my mailbox.
Yeah, because when when the planning board sent out, a bunch of notices, we were required to send it out by, the US mail. So that was not done by the planning board.
To answer your question, it's been turned over to the United States Postal Service. They're investigating it. We have information on who it was be. They cited them, they know who it is. Okay. It's been turned over to the United States Postal Service. They're gonna act on it.
I assume you're speaking of the selectmen when you say that, or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Was somebody in a white truck with a white cap that spent a lot of time by my barn?
I heard about that today.
Yeah, I didn't know who it was.
And it wasn't any part of the assessors or anything like that.
No, it wasn't any concern to the
I
citizens.
heard you came down today.
I already have a big mouth, nobody gave me one.
Last call for comments?
Just so everybody knows, the town don't have nothing to do with these flyers. This was turned in by people delivering mail. They alerted their supervisor. This all started from the Cornish post office. We're hands-free on this.
Sure, we do one.
My wife worked for the post office almost 30 years.
I must have done. All right, if there's no other comments, I think I'd ask for a motion to continue the public hearing to a date uncertain once we receive more
Make a
information.
motion that we, continue the, public hearing to a date uncertain and, I'll make that motion first.
I'll second.
Vote, all in favor?
And motion that we table the application until such time as we hear from the applicant again.
Is it procedurally, is that the way I don't know.
Yeah, because you're not gonna, you're gonna basically, if you will, react to them, and so we've got nothing at this point. There's no reason to have another meeting on this application until they submit or say we're ready to continue.
So you're motioning
I'm motioning that we table any planning board review or action on the Nature's Wilderness CUP until further notification by the applicant.
The only other question we have, I don't have to be on the agenda.